What's up? Welcome to the Four Students podcast. We're back again. It's me, Ed.
What's up, everybody?
And everyone's favorite. I think that's literally going to be my name for you. Everyone's favorite, Kelly.
I hope it becomes true.
I think
not that I want to be
becomes. I think it is.
I don't think so.
I think so. You're awesome. And you don't yap and jabber like I do, so people are naturally going to
Well,
be
this is a podcast, so it's kind
I guess
of
that's true.
important to yap and
yap.
jabber.
When you got here, you had just come from something and you were like keyed up about it. And I want you to talk about that. What was going on? Where did you just come from?
Okay, so I have he just turned 5, actually. I have a 5-year-old in preschool.
Yeah, about to be a kindergartner.
Last year of preschool. We're like 3 weeks away from graduating that, heading off to kindergarten. So every year, right before Mother's Day, because Sunday's Mother's Day, is a mommy and me something at school.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's like muffins or tea or something. And so all the moms come in and like sit with their kids, and then there's like the fill in the blank
that they filled out about you.
Yeah. So like my mom's favorite color is blank, or my mom does this great or whatever. So then they fill it out. So you get to see that, and then they make you like a card or whatever.
Yeah.
So I knew that I had 20 minutes there, and then I had a 20-minute drive here.
Okay.
And that we were going to jump right in, and so I wasn't going to have time to change. So I was like, okay, I'm going to just dress how I normally dress. Mm-hmm. And this is what I look like most of the time. I wear a lot of black.
This is how we dress all the time. Me too.
And so I knew that was going to be the case. I was going to have time. And so I walk into the classroom, and I knew this ahead of time as well, but it was just confirmation. I walk in, and like all the other moms, like 16 other moms, are in their like Mother's Day best, like what they're showing up for their pictures
dresses
in, and like
this,
floral and
derby hats,
high heels, and like I was like, yep, there they are.
And here I am.
And here I am. And yeah, I don't know. It's just always so funny to me because, I feel emotions around it because that's how it's always been with me in that school. Like they just are so awesome. Those other moms.
Yeah, it's funny.
And I'm like, I can't do that.
Well, I mean, here I am.
Can't play a part.
I'm in my 50s, and I still struggle all the time with, particularly now that I'm co-leading this organization.
I know, like when we show up to things and we need to look nice.
It's kind of like and I present in front of professionals, in front of students all the time, and I'm always like, is now the time I start dressing, like a
grown-up?
I guess like a grown-up. I mean, I feel like I dress like a grown-up, but I just don't. I just like sweatshirts and jeans and clogs and hats and tennis shoes. Yeah. And there's a part of me that's like, I'm not going to bend to the will of culture, and society and telling me, but maybe that's childish for me to think that way. I don't know. Well, I'm going to figure it out sooner or later.
We feel the same way because I walk into that school every day and I'm like, I'm not like you guys.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's totally okay.
It's fine.
Totally okay. Well, here we are. Like, and today's podcast is amazing. We'll get into that in just a second because I'm so pumped about who we got to interview, and it's just really, really good. Her story's fantastic. But we are, as we're recording this, like early, middle of May, like first third of May is kind of almost there. It's, I think, what is today, the 8th, 7th, 8th, something like that. Mm-hmm. And we are now officially done with all of our school events. As of yesterday was our last event. And yesterday was added. It was kind of just tagged on to the end. It was really cool.
And then it was yesterday.
But yeah, so we're done with all of our events. And we would have been done earlier, but it was really cool that Union County Public Schools, a school district here in the Charlotte area, had us come down and speak to, they have like a student athlete leadership cohort that they put together.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how many from each school, but there's 10 high schools in Union County.
2 freshmen, 2 sophomores, 2 juniors, 2 seniors.
Okay, so 8 then.
So they get, I guess, nominated by their AD.
That's sure. Cool. Yeah, they're selected, peers, coaches, AD from each school, and then they get to come, and then the countywide AD and assistant AD work with them, athletic director, that's what that stands for. And so they hang with them, and they do this leadership kind of meeting with them 4 times throughout the year. And they invited us in to come do our thoughts curriculum with them for this last one. And that was yesterday. And it was just really fun.
It was really fun.
It was our first event outside of an independent or charter school. because those are the schools that can say yes and have said yes to
Right.
us. But yeah, it was our first time like with a true public school wide, almost district wide kind of an event, even if it was just, I think there were 76 students, like, or something like that, 75. There
Yeah, I
were
think that's what I
5 or 6
counted.
students that couldn't be there. But yeah, it was just a great time.
You could tell that it was a room full of leaders.
That's very
It was
true.
really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. So that was just great. And now we're headed into our conference. And so that's really
2 weeks
exciting. 2 weeks from this past 2 days ago, right? Tuesday.
Yeah.
So on the 20th, 12 days away, we have our big Charlotte conference, which is really, really exciting. So that's what we're gearing up for.
So
and
excited.
It's fun and all of that stuff's happening. I have a high school senior that's about to graduate high school. I think I've mentioned it. It's just a big year. Like you have Ezra who's graduating preschool. But my wife, Jen, and I are about to be empty nesters like come August because she'll head off to school. So that's wild to think about. Lots of stuff going on, both professionally and personally. But yeah, this story today, we kind of go in a direction we've never gone. Like when I interviewed Patrick, it got a little bit philosophical. And it even turned to the idea of a divine or, and stuff like that. But the Emma story today, as we get into it, we met Emma back when I was leading that student ministry where you and I met, where you were volunteering and your husband was volunteering. And you ended up even coming on staff for this church and all of that stuff. And we spent a lot of time trying to make amazing events. You for anyone across church-wide, but then me specifically for students and us working together in that way. But then almost, over 4 years ago, I stepped away from working for the church, and we've created this organization that is not a religious organization. But we obviously, a lot of our deep relationships are still with people that we spent time with. And you and your husband are still go to church there and all of that and still work with the student ministry there. And so it's interesting because we get into this story with Emma that we know so well. And I'm so excited for people to meet her and her energy and her positivity and just how cool she is. But not surprisingly, as she hits a really, really hard patch of life, the thing that she ends up turning to is her faith deeply. And she learns a lot of other things through therapy and all of that, but that's kind of where this story goes. So it'll be a first for us for sure to go into having someone share like what their personal faith journey and this kind of metaphysical thing, how it showed up for her in a very real way in her experience for sure as she was fighting this thing and going through this stuff. What do you think? Anything you think of you want people to hear, know as we jump into this conversation with Emma?
I mean, Emma does a great job of putting, I talk about this a little bit on there. Like she does a great job of putting her thoughts into words and being able to explain that really well. And so I hope that people can relate to that and think, okay, well, maybe I've never thought about it this way. I've never been able to like wrap my head around what this feeling is or why I might be feeling this. And so I have a lot of hope that people are going to be able to be like, oh, maybe that's why, just because of things that she will open up for them, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really cool, particularly as she's talking about her relationships with her sisters and one sister in particular and her time in therapy and then around a diagnosis that comes and all of this stuff. It's really, really cool watching her articulate that stuff.
She's put a lot of things through a filter of like, what do I learn from this? Like experience and like, what did this teach me? And how did I respond to this? And so I think it's really important to put time into processing things that you go through and then be able to articulate them after. And I don't know, we kind of talked about this a little bit at the last one with the temperaments where
predisposition one.
Like the more you say things, the less it owns you, the more you can wrap your head around it, the more you can make peace with it. Yeah. And so, I don't know, she does a really good job of that.
She really does. And it's funny, and as she jumps into this faith thing again, because I think the last thing, there's a little fear that comes up into me because we did all meet at a church and like we don't want people to feel like, oh, like this is a Christian podcast or is like in some way, I don't know, like not aware of or paying attention to or like in some way trying to push a Christian agenda or worldview or anything on anyone. But I think it's at the same time this ability and the beauty of her being vulnerable about how
this is her experience.
This is her experience and
This is
her
what she
faith
thinks.
and all of that. And
She
so
should be able to share that.
And 100%, I think it's really cool. So whether you have a Christian background or understanding or not, I hope that you can hear this story and hear her explain how powerfully her belief system and the narrative and the way that she sees the world was such a huge piece of allowing her to cope and have comfort, et cetera, during this time, and the community that her church provided for her during this time.
Yep.
While she ends up, as you'll hear, kind of like in an unbelievably difficult situation for a high school junior going into senior year. So it's just really neat. So yeah, again, thanks for joining us on the For Students podcast, and we're really excited for you to hear this interview with the amazing Emma Wooten. Check this out.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
So good to be here. Emma, we're really excited to have you on the show today. We've known you now for a long time. I was trying to think about how long we've known you. When did you guys come back to Charlotte, your family?
It was the summer between 2nd and 3rd grade. So I was young, but we didn't
meet right then.
Right.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah. I came to Ridge when I think I was like starting in my 6th grade.
So starting middle school?
Starting middle school.
Mm-hmm.
We met you at one of your most vulnerable times.
No, really.
So that's 7 years of school, and then you've been out
2 years.
For 2 years.
Wow.
Almost a
decade.
Wow. That's a really long time.
That's really cool. Yeah. And what's funny is, like you mentioned, Ridge, this was the church that we were all going to together.
Mm-hmm.
And I had left education. I think at that point, I don't even know how many years. I think I started working for Ridge. They'd asked me to leave teaching and come lead the student ministry there. And I did that for 8 years. And I did that 2013 was the first year that I did that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what year that would have been. I guess 9 years ago. That would have been 2016. So I was 3 years deep into it. And the thing that I remember about Emma, and I've told you this, and it was so endearing to me because I've worked with now students for like 25 years and teaching and all of this stuff, was that we were at a summer camp down in Florida. And I remember in one of the sessions during the game portion, you had kind of gone all the way down to the front to the stage. And this is like 1,600 students in this room.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what, it's funny.
I don't know what's about to happen. I was there, but I don't remember.
You don't remember this?
You'll remember.
I will.
As soon as I say
so
it,
I'm like literally sitting on the edge of my
And to
seat.
clarify for anyone listening to this, this isn't like a Jesus camp, like rattlesnakes and chickens and all of that stuff. But anyways, all that to say, it would be less weird maybe than you're thinking, or not weird enough for some people who are listening. I don't know. It's kind of somewhere right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, we're at this camp, this Christian camp, and we're looking down there, and Emma is dressed head to toe in a full body banana costume.
Yeah.
I see.
Yes.
Which
Remember
y'all
that?
gave to me. I got that through one of
we
the
had
other
it with
things
us.
that we
I don't
had
remember.
done,
I think we had done
I brought it with me.
Yes, we had done something, and you ended up with the costume.
As you should.
And you were like decided to be like in the crowd, just down front, just like sitting, I think, on one of the subwoofers or speakers or something, like just in a full on, like a banana's chilling up there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like Peely from Fortnite, like just sitting
before
right there.
Peely was
long before Peely
whoa,
was.
You got the idea from me, actually.
Maybe. So, but this is what was cool about it to me, is that you're in 6th grade, or you had just finished 6th grade. So that would be between 6th and 7th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in a crowd of your peers.
all the way up to seniors.
All the way up to high school seniors. So in the most, and we know this because we work with this population, the judgiest group of people that exist are high school students. And you are just chilling like as about to be a 7th grader in a banana costume. Yes.
That just exhumed out of me.
Yes, that's a compelling thing. Why?
They say confidence. I would say an underdeveloped thought process, because if I had thought to myself, this is like all of these people are really judgy, and there's so many people here, and people are going to take pictures, and this is going to last for no.
We're going to be talking about this on a podcast 10 years from now.
Yeah, that's right. You never would have guessed
that. But it was more just, Wouldn't it be so funny?
And
I
it
Honestly,
was.
though, I hear what you're saying, but I think you would do the same thing right now
Maybe.
and 3 years ago.
If I had
think
enough
that
hype,
all along.
if
I
I
think
had
all along.
if I had enough of a small like crew in my corner that were
Yeah.
also like that
You'd-
would be really funny.
you do it
You're in.
all day.
all day.
Just a couple.
If
Yeah,
it
hype
would
people.
like if we go, I now lead a group of middle school girls.
Mhm.
If they told me to do that, 1,000%,
1000%.
I would never come up with that idea myself now and just be like, I'm
Wouldn't
gonna
it be
do
funny?
this.
Wouldn't it be funny? But no, I mean, just
But-
that, whether you call it like lack of forethought or, like self-awareness, whatever, to watch as an adult, to watch someone be willing to do that at that age at such a vulnerable time, remembering what it felt like, it was just really cool. And I kind of knew you a little bit before then, because you had only been
Yeah.
around, for however long of that
Yeah.
school year. But I was immediately just like, okay, Emma is now one of my favorite people. And you have been since then. Like, honestly,
Oh,
since
my
then. Like,
goodness.
you have this vibe. You're just, really, really neat. Really, really cool.
Well,
You're neat.
You are. You're really neat. Maybe, who knows? Maybe that word will come back from the 50s where I
You're
just pulled
neato.
that from. Neato. Yeah. So people don't know you. So
Right.
like, Emma, like, tell us a little bit about like your family. Do you have siblings? Tell us about your parents, kind of the house like you grew up in. Like,
Yeah.
who are you? What's your story? What made you you?
yeah. So, I grew up with an older sister and a younger sister, and
Middle
my
child.
parents,
Mhm.
yes, right in the middle. And like we had a lot of fun. We still do. We're
You guys
really.
are a fun group.
It can be really, really fun. But I mean, we would just like play outside, make fairy gardens.
You and both your sisters, were all three of you making fairy gardens?
More me and Kara. Hannah
Okay, younger.
got too cool for us.
Yeah.
Old.
At that point, but we run around. We had like 4 houses in a row, and we knew like all of the people, and so there was like our house and then our neighbor friends,
The Foltzes?
and they know that was the Simons. So Chloe
Oh.
and Lily.
That's funny.
Yes. And so we would just like run back and forth, no shoes, like between these houses and just have such a fun time. There was also, 3 girls with different personalities, so conflict and lots of sometimes lots of things going on with that. But
Will you summarize that real quick? Like, so you have an older sister, Hannah.
Yeah.
How would you kind of just generally describe, you say 3 different personalities? I'd love,
Yes.
we got a glimpse into your banana
Yeah.
personality. What is Hannah's personality like, and then what's Kara's like?
Hannah is like conflict avoidance, peacemaking, very chill, very like happy to like, she's just along for the ride. She's
Okay.
like very independent, like does her own thing, and then like everybody else, she's just kind of like, okay, like you just do you, I'm just gonna do what I do, and
Mhm.
like so she did, but yeah, and so she was just very like middle, like very chill.
Yeah. She's
Kara-
graduating today.
Yes,
From-
she is. She's graduating from App State. She's going to be a choral music educator. She got a
Dude.
job.
Yeah.
She got a job like 2 hours ago, like
No
the one that
way.
she wanted.
Yay.
Mhm.
On the day of her graduation, she
yeah,
got her job.
Isn't that so
What a
awesome?
freaking dream.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
No kidding.
So
Way to go,
we're
Hannah.
all
When you hear
like-
this weeks from now. Like, congrats.
Yes, so we're all really excited for her. But she's leaving us. She's going off to Northern Virginia.
Mhm.
So that's
That's
really,
wild.
really sad.
So she's lived, for those people who don't know, we are in Charlotte, and then like
Mhm.
App's about 2.5 hours away. you know,
Yeah.
hour 45 if you drive like Whitney. But Virginia is quite a ways. So, like, how many hours away will she be in Northern
That's
Virginia? Is that
further.
like 6 hours, 5 hours,
yeah,
something like that?
it's gonna
Close
be
to DC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's up there. It'll
Yeah.
be a hike to get over there. But
Before you move on to Kara, how do
yeah.
you feel about that? Like, your
I'm
oldest sister,
sad.
being that far away.
Well, and so I think like the good thing was this semester she was here for student teaching,
Right.
and I like my school is really close, and I come back like truly just like all the time,
hmm
and so it was like a really. And I think we all knew this was kind of gonna be our like
Oh, dude, that makes
our
it
last
rough.
hurrah of
Yeah.
like all living under the same roof, all being like very involved in the same like circles and community and like really being like that family unit.
Yeah.
And so I think we all kind of knew that was coming to a close a little bit with her graduating and moving so far away. And so I think that like we've all really been intentional about like spending that time together and being together and having fun.
So extra sweet, but then it's just going to make it
But then it's
difficult.
also going to be so sad. But my parents, we have like kind of a middle spot too in Raleigh. That's where my grandparents live. And so like luckily like we can kind of meet in the middle there and still see each other easy-ish.
Yeah, when does she have to head off to Virginia?
I think like mid-August.
Oh, okay. So right before the school year starts.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you still have a little bit more time. We're recording this like early May. Early May, yeah.
So we've got some time and we're definitely going to soak it up.
Yeah, no kidding.
Of
That's
course.
crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
and then you have a younger sister. How would you describe Kira?
She and I both have like are very strong-willed.
What does that mean?
So it means we butt heads, or not so much now, but especially growing up. And she was like growing up struggling with a lot of anxiety, specifically like sensory anxiety. And so like for somebody who goes to school all day and everything's loud and she was like like second grade. And so she like nobody could verbalize this like we can now, but like
uncomfortable. You don't
would
like it.
go to school, be overwhelmed all day, have so much going on, so much sensory input, like just so much happening. And then we get in the car and I'm so loud and I talk so much that like it was just
it just didn't create
it was just like a very like I think just like triggering is like a weird way to put it, but like for lack of a better like that would be very triggering for her and so but like nobody could say that and we couldn't be like there was not that well when you do this it makes me feel this way or like what it was like rah!
Yes.
And so like and then I am not like Hannah's so peaceful. I am not that way. She like, and so we would just go back and forth. And so there was like a lot of conflict growing up in that kind of with all of that going on. But now like she's very cool. She's like super, super smart, very like analytical, very logical. Very like
she understands her needs,
right,
and can communicate them really well.
Probably,
yes, and so it's really cool to like hang out with her. Like I had her come up for our spring formal this year, and like just got to hang out with her for the weekend. Tried so hard to get her to come to my school, but she didn't want to, which is okay. I'm just glad it made it on the list.
Yeah.
And so. Yeah, and so she's a senior in high school. And so so we've definitely figured out our relationship more and it like took really a lot of like cuz I had hurt from how that went because like I had hurt from, always kind of getting in trouble because of that and always like and just not understanding like just fully being myself and then that being so frustrating for another person like that
who was also fully being themselves.
Yes. Yeah. And so like trying to find that middle ground and like come to the understanding of like okay like because then it almost became like habitual like in the sense of like we were always on guard, like ready to like see.
Well, you have history. You have these learned moments of how we operate.
And so, like figuring out how to like let that go and be like, okay, like let's just figure this out.
Yeah,
like that took a lot of conversations, and it took a lot of like understanding how to verbalize that and understanding where we were at and what was going on to like figure that out. So it's really fun to be in this like new kind of stage of our relationship where we're like developing that friendship more as sisters and like really appreciating each other for the things that like really kind of help like created conflict and like learning to appreciate that about each other and like
I think that's really cool.
all of that. So
No, it's very cool. One of the things I think about is, this is something that I just realized because my youngest is also a senior and is friends with your youngest sister, Kara. And I think like Annie probably has never necessarily, maybe she has, she certainly realized this about herself. But I think she has some sensory things as well and can get overwhelmed, certainly chewing noises, et cetera, et cetera. And like she comes home after probably much like Kara in the car with you. She's had to kind of keep that in all day. You can't react to teachers and the people around you the way you want to, but with your family, you can.
That's
so Kara would get in the car and you would get in the car, both of you tempering what you had been and who you actually are all day. And then just become you with each other and boom, oil and water.
I
think the thing that you said, like things changed. And I guess, I don't know, we're just jumping in right here, like from the get-go. Like what catalyzed like, because some people, they never
Some
change.
people that just makes like it an estranged relationship into adulthood.
How did you guys get to this place where you could actually begin to heal or understand each other better?
Yeah, I think so. Both of us like had gone to counseling, and I think Kara understanding what was going on with her, like, because truly she kind of took the first step in that. And I think it took me longer to catch up. Like it took me longer to realize like, okay, like this isn't actually how things are anymore, and like we can move into something different. But I need her to listen to this because I don't think
she will. It's your sister. I'm certain she'll listen to it. What's up, Kara?
Hey, but she really took the first step in that because I think like because we were able to recognize that there was something else going on and there was something that needed additional help and additional support with her anxiety. Like, so she got into counseling and had consistently been going to counseling and made some big strides in that way. And then when I started going to counseling much, much later, like, and we can get into this a little bit more later, but like what I was going to counseling for wasn't necessarily for that. But eventually that is something that
all connects.
That like I did talk about. And so being able to talk about that separately and then coming together, and it was through conflict. Like we got to this point by meeting that same conflict and dealing with it differently and like navigating that differently together and being able to say, here's where I'm at, how do we get somewhere better? Like, you know? And so I think once we both kind of were able to address our own things and our own things that we like had kind of hurt each other with, like, and we're able to verbalize that with other people and then find a way to verbalize that to each other, that I feel like helped so much. So
that's really cool.
That's amazing.
Super mature.
And crazy. Well, there's again, like the more we look down, like the cooler things become actually as you begin to think about these details. Because I think for so many, particularly like you were just mentioning, like into adulthood with estranged relationships between parents, children,
that's
between
the natural
siblings,
tendency.
between
this is the abnormal
this
thing.
is the kind of the exception. And it's because of the work you did. But how many of us and people listening are still operating out of old paradigms of the way things were when we were whatever age or in whatever season. And now are still operating as if all those things are true and everyone has evolved and changed. And there may be a huge opportunity to recognize that was true, the way things were. This may be why, and discovering it through counseling or however else, but maybe there is new opportunity now as we've both grown and we have greater awareness around who we are, who you were, you know, all of that stuff. And then I just want to shout out your parents, like Christy and Warren, because getting you into counseling, like they are incredible human beings, like a nurse and then working in public housing and Warren getting his doctorate and all that stuff. They're just
very awesome.
Amazing
Such a power
people. They are a power couple.
They're iconic.
But to get you and to see that need and to watch you guys warring and for you dealing with this thing, you know, this diagnosis that we're going to get into, and we talked beforehand and you gave permission for us to talk about that. So thank you for that. I'm not like telling your story right now. But like how cool for them to see that need and realize, well, this may help and to take the steps to make that happen. That's really, really cool.
Really cool.
Yeah. So then you like talk about, if you don't mind, What was high school like? So here's this banana costume wearing 6th grader. Where did it go, and what was because were you were you at Northwest as well? Okay.
So even in that like middle schooler, because I stayed at Northwest from 6th grade until 10th grade.
Okay.
Yep.
Real quick, just tell everybody what Northwest is.
So
What is
Northwest
here?
is a magnet school and it has like a special focus in the performing arts. So like while I was there, I had you chose a major, and then you would take classes kind of surrounding that major, but then it was also like very academically focused as well. But it was cool because the arts were always like very kind of intertwined with all of the academic things as well. So that was
What
was
major
fun.
did you choose?
I had like 4 different ones.
You chose 4 majors?
No, I just switched around a lot. I started in theater, and then I went to musical theater, and then chorus, and then tech theater, and I just like jumped around because I was just.
But
at
least
trying different things.
You just want to do it all.
Just doing stuff, yeah.
Just doing stuff. Theater is definitely the key piece.
Yes. So. Yeah, and then I was there all the way through COVID. I think I was in my freshman year of high school when COVID hit. And so then we went online. And then at some point in all of this, like I knew I wanted to be a nurse. And so I was like, I don't want to be at this art school. Like once I know what I want to do, like we're doing it. Like let's go.
Yeah.
And so so at that point I went into a middle college program.
Okay.
And through that was able to take a whole bunch of my prerequisite courses for nursing programs. And so I took I got almost my full associate's degree in my last couple of years of high school. So I'm going to turn off my phone.
That's okay. In 11th grade, just to understand this. So in 11th grade, you left this performing arts magnet school, went to this thing called middle college, which is from my understanding, a hybrid.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. You take high school classes and college classes at the same time on a college campus.
Yes. There's like one hallway. That's like, here's your high school.
Yes.
And it's like one hallway in this community college. So, but it was a great opportunity. Like it gave me a lot because I was able to kind of jump past my first year of a 4-year college because I had already taken all my prereqs. And so I was able to kind of transfer into the school. And so I wouldn't be able to go just for financial reasons, I wouldn't be able to go to the college that I go to if I hadn't done that. Cause now we're paying for 3 years versus the 4. So, I'm super glad that I did that. And that helped a lot with that side of things.
So. And then you also said something, and this is kind of what I do. I hear you say things, and I'm just going to keep going back and asking you.
Nitpick.
And sorry, because I think we could get some juice out of this that could be helpful for someone listening.
It's good.
Without question, we've gotten a lot. But no, you said something happened and you realized you wanted to go into nursing. Do you remember what made you so sure as a 10th grader? I don't want to do theater and stuff. I want to do. And so specific.
Nursing. I want to do this, and I'm going to go do this way.
Yeah, because I had no clue what I finished high school and had no clue what I wanted to do.
I was in the car. And my mom's a nurse, and I love my mom, and I'm very similar.
Love her. I just want to be her.
I want to be her so much, and I want to be with her forever.
Yes. We can nurse together.
But so my mom's a nurse, and so I had heard a lot of her stories, and she went to nursing school while I was in elementary school. Elizabeth Traditional, that's right here.
Next door,
Oh, wow.
That's where I went to elementary school because it's so close to CPCC where she was doing her nursing program.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I drove past it and I was like, whoa, there's my playground.
Had it changed much?
A little bit.
Okay.
It's nicely upgraded.
Okay.
Looks very
good for them.
Very
Yeah,
sleek.
way to go, Elizabeth.
But yeah, and so I was so I remembered her being in school. And I remembered doing drug flashcards with her in the car, pronouncing acetaminophen as a 4th grader.
That is so
I remember
funny.
that.
That's so specific.
I
love that.
And so having been around for all of that and hearing her story, she worked in the pediatric ER here in downtown Charlotte. And so hearing all of her stories and just knowing how similar I am to her and seeing how much she loved it and how much she enjoyed it and how good she was at it. Cause she's a really freaking good nurse.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
she's
that's
just
surprising.
really, she
Yeah.
is very knowledgeable, and she does what she does very well. And she does that with everything.
Well, but she's also so compassionate. Like
Yes.
what you guys call bedside manner. Like she's just such a comforting,
Yeah.
great
Mhm.
person. You just
Yeah.
feel it's so easy to be with
Yeah.
Christy.
You
Yeah.
just feel taken care of.
And then
Mhm.
for her also to have this expertise, what a cool
Yes,
combination.
absolutely.
Literally
And so,
every time my kids get sick with anything, I text her pictures and I'm like, "Hey, should I be worried about this?"
yeah,
Or
yeah.
That's
how
so
much? What was the last one? It was like allergy medicine, and it was like, what's the dosage for this? Can I give to him? He weighs this much.
Yeah.
And she's
no,
like,
absolutely.
7.5 milliliters. I'm like, thank you.
Milliliters,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
No, yes. And so just seeing her do that and like hearing her stories and knowing who she is and how similar I am to her, like, so that to me just made it, I don't know.
like
And I don't have like a
confirmation.
specific
Yeah.
moment. I
Yeah.
just remember being in the car one day and being like,
This makes
and
sense.
I
This
think
is
she's the
amazing.
one who suggested middle college to me.
Oh,
She was like, so
interesting.
now that you know you don't want to do that, like, do you want to try this other thing? And I was not very attached to Northwest. Like, I did not have, I mean, I had some friends there that like, but they were like the get you through the school day kind of friends
Sure.
where like you just go and you hang out with them. But like they weren't who I was closely connected
Right.
throughout high school or middle school. And so like there wasn't much really keeping me there.
Mm-hmm.
So where
and
were your close friends? Was that through youth
that
group?
was was
Okay.
through church, through youth group, through my small group.
Yeah, I think that's probably a lot of people's
Yeah.
story.
Sure.
Like it may not be the people like you go to
Mhm.
school with people and there are people you love that are in classes with, etc.
Yeah.
But when it comes time, you're not with them. It was that
Right.
class that was holding you together. It wasn't.
Yeah.
And so then you choose to spend time with people
Mhm.
on your swim team or like Granger and these people that we've talked to
Yes.
in the past. They have
Yeah.
other social groups outside of
Yeah.
school.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and so and then because I was at the middle college, I was also able to like work a lot through high school, and that was really awesome. I worked at a preschool, I nannied, and I like absolutely loved that. So
So do you imagine then those worlds coming together? Like your
Oh.
mom, the pediatric piece?
oh yeah,
Okay.
oh yeah,
Yeah, that makes a lot of
Oh,
sense to me. too.
yeah.
Makes a lot of sense
I
to
love
me.
it.
So you finish high school, which is the last 2 years
Mhm.
of high school for you, junior, senior year,
Yeah.
or college,
Yeah.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then you chose where you were going to school. And you'd
Yes.
already been so exposed to the college environment. I'm
Yeah.
curious what that transition was like. But first, how did you choose where you wanted to go to school?
So I like knew very much I knew what I wanted. Like
Yeah.
I knew I wanted a great nursing program. I knew I wanted to be close to home. I knew that I wanted like just a good, like for me, I chose to go to a Christian school, or like a Christian based school.
Mhm.
And for me, like I just wanted to be able to be in an environment where like part of like learning, part of our curriculum and part of our what we needed to like graduate or whatever, like I wanted to have those Old Testament and New Testament classes. Like I
Mhm.
wanted to learn more about that. And so it has been, I mean, I love it there. But so all of those things kind of came together, and like the school that I go to is just all of the, like it just
Yeah.
had the things that I
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this magical, like I went there and it just felt like, that wasn't my story. Like I didn't go there and it just felt right like that. I went there and I was like,
Yep.
this is what
This
I
makes-
like.
checks
this
all the
makes sense.
boxes.
This works for me.
This is what
Yeah.
I want.
And so, and then once the like financial piece also came into play and it worked out, I was like, okay, great.
This is
This
awesome.
check,
works.
check.
And
good.
really what it was, it was a choice between, do I want to go to a 4-year college or do I want to go to the community college here, get my 2-year degree, and then go and do further education after that? Because I
Yeah.
knew I wanted my BSN. I know that I want to, I think, pretty
What is
sure.
BSN?
Yeah,
real quick?
tell us what
That's
that
the
is.
Bachelor of Science in Nursing.
got
And
it.
then
Yeah.
I
And
knew
that's
that
the 4-year. You have a 4-year
Yes.
bachelor's and
Mhm.
nursing. And whereas, what is it? Just nurses? What is it?
that would be an
What-
ASN. So
An
that's
ASN
the
is the associate. So it's just a
Mhm.
2-year nursing program.
Yes.
Got it.
And
Okay.
so, and I knew that I might want to go on and be a nurse practitioner, which
Mhm.
would require your master's or your doctorate.
Yeah.
And so it was either like go to community college and get my ASN, and kind of stay in this area, keep nannying for some of the families that I was nannying for, like stay in a lot of the same rhythms, plus nursing school, or like, do I want to kind of go to a different environment altogether, live on campus, do all that? And I was like, I was just ready to kind of get myself into a new space. I felt like, you know how you have to, this is how I explained it at the time, how you have to like repot plants once they get to a certain point. I was like, okay, I think it's time for me to be repotted.
I love that so much.
That's a great analogy, I think.
And so I was like, okay, so it was really that choice between like this 4-year university that had everything I wanted, or do I stay here? And so I ended up going to that 4-year university. And I guess this is kind of where we can get to like the diagnosis that we mentioned.
Oh yeah. Like
that
if you want to jump in,
that was mentioned.
So during all of this, like how this bombshell kind of falls.
Because I think I was always the kid that was like, I'm going to go really far away, and I'm going to be like across the country. And I'm probably never across the country, but I felt like I would go pretty far away to school, and I would like
Virginia or something.
Sure. Well, no, that's still too far. Maybe like 4 hours away.
Yes. Okay.
And so I always kind of thought that that's where like how I would be. But then it was like a few days after my 17th birthday, I went to the doctor and they found a lump on my neck. And then it was later diagnosed as papillary thyroid cancer. And so this summer between my junior and senior year, I had spent kind of going through that treatment and that, like everything that kind of went along with that. And so then by the time I got to making my college decision, I was like, I don't want to go very far. I've had enough adventure for now. So I kind of wanted to just stay closer and be able to be close to home.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So.
Do you mind like when here you are, like high school student. I mean, you have plenty of worries.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just being a high school student, like we all, and all those things. As you get older, obviously those things feel less and like, wow, I can't believe I used to worry about that, you know, but just, you just worry. They're so acute. They're so real. But then suddenly there's this thing that like is this, I mean, it would just dwarf everything else. I would guess. Would you talk about like, what was it like to be diagnosed with that? And did it change the way you saw things? And like, what was that
Sure.
like?
It was very surreal in the sense of like, you know what people say of like, you don't think it could be you or whatever. And at first, like when they say like, oh, this is cancer, like that word holds so much weight.
That's scary.
And at the time, like I didn't know how manageable it was. I didn't know any of the like the stats or like anything about what was really going on in my body and what was happening and like all of that. So at first, like it's just this like shock of like, okay, like what? Well, and so they found this lump. I went to a ultrasound on my neck. They saw that it was this big mass, but they were like, this could just be this like benign thing, like this just weird thing that's happening and it's fine. Or it could be cancer. And so I went to the hospital, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia is where I got all of my care, just because it's pretty abnormal for someone so young to have thyroid cancer. It's a little more common in like people like middle age kind of. And so it's just very abnormal for a pediatric case. And so I went to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and then they did a fine needle biopsy, which is where they stick a needle like in and out your neck, which is like crazy.
But it's a fine needle.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Well,
No,
I couldn't see it, but they also gave me some crazy drugs. And I remember.
Did you remember the name of it? Mom, I bet this is from the flashcard.
I didn't remember the name of it, but it was really fun to hang out in there. There was like weird lights on the ceiling that I was staring at. I was like, that looks like a tree. And then I kept telling, this is the one thing I remember. I kept telling the doctor, I was like, "You're doing so good." Like he would be like,
so
"Okay, I did
you're
the first
taking
pass."
care of him.
And I was
or
like,
her,
"You're doing
whoever it was.
great." And he was like, "Oh, thanks." So, and they did a great. Like they are very well equipped there, and they like provided some really, really incredible care. And so they did this fine needle biopsy, and then they were like, "We still don't really know." And I was like, "How do you not really know?"
You stuck my neck so many times.
When
Certainly you know something.
And so then they removed half of my thyroid and then did full pathology. And that's when they found that it was malignant. I keep hitting this. It was malignant, and it had angioinvasion, which basically means like it spread into my blood vessel. And so at that point they said, okay, we're going to take the other side out. And I think the other side also had a smaller tumor on it, but it hadn't like become malignant yet. And then they did something called radioactive iodine, which is a crazy, it's a wild thing that they have you do, because it's this like little pill and it's radioactive. So they have all of their like radioactive gear on.
Okay.
And so they're
While
not
they give you
touching.
this pill.
Yes, and then they're like, eat this.
Yeah, I've heard about this. I know a little bit about this.
I'm like, that is so
That's
weird.
really intimidating.
Like so like you have to pee and then you have to flush it twice. And when you take a shower, you have to keep the shower, like the water running, and it like, so all of these rules, and I like wasn't around to like allowed to be within 6 feet of people. And I was like, I have practice with this from COVID.
Yes,
I
that's
remember
true.
this.
That's
I
valid.
remember
Dude,
this.
what a crazy! There's so many details around that I never thought about,
Yeah.
because I've heard about how they detect potential
Yeah.
other spots in you,
Yeah.
but I didn't think about the outworkings of them walking in the room.
No.
Like with
It was
this
like
thing,
Ghostbusters, and they
Yes.
had to
Yeah.
like make sure I wasn't too radioactive to like,
like
send
a
me
Geiger
home.
counter, like checking
Yeah, and
Oh my
so
gosh,
it
that's
was
so
so weird.
crazy.
And then they were like, also don't be around children or pregnant people, which like I wasn't.
you. What about
But
your
we did-
dog?
I know. I was in Philadelphia, so
Oh,
I
that's
didn't
right,
get to
that's
have my
right, you
dog
weren't
with me.
here.
But and then we went to the zoo, and I was like, "Stay away from me, children!" Like, I
You
would
don't
ride in
know,
the back
I'm
of the car, so
walking
I was 6 feet
radioactive.
away from my mom, who was driving the car. So we would like keep that 6 foot
Wow.
and then,
Crazy.
but then I was like, I like kept trying to move from these children because it's only for a certain amount of time. Like you
Sure.
have to be far enough. So like I was
How long was it?
I don't know, like I think more than 30 minutes. Like you couldn't be within.
Oh, but I mean, how long did you have to think about
Yeah.
your own
Ooh.
radioactivity? Do you remember how
maybe
long
at
that
like
was?
a week, not
Oh.
a week, a few days
That's
where we had to
crazy.
do.
That's still crazy.
And I had to like we had to wash my clothes a certain way, and so like all of this stuff.
Wow.
Which is so
You never think
weird.
about.
It's so weird for them to like give you such a potent thing and just be like, this is terribly harmful to everybody, but it's gonna help you. And it's like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
I trust you.
I guess. So that was like just a very bizarre, that whole thing was very, very bizarre. And then from then, so then you don't have a thyroid anymore. And that's like a whole other can
Yeah,
of
what
words
does a
because
thyroid do
it
for
does
those of us
so
who
many
don't know?
It does
things.
everything.
It does so many things. It like helps control energy levels, metabolism, like brain power, focus, like mood, like all of these
Wow.
different things. And so when you take that away, and then it's like, okay, so this thing that like controls a whole bunch of stuff is no longer there anymore. Now you have to be on some sort of replacement for that, because without that, like your body
Sure.
doesn't function. Like
Right.
after a certain point, it don't work anymore. And so I was put on one medication, and that just made me a very unpleasant human being. I was not a fun person to be around at
Did you
all.
notice it in yourself, or were you just hearing this from other people?
Yes, and also like my mom has thyroid
Okay.
things going on as well, and so like my body ended up reacting very similarly to how hers did and does with that same type of medication. And so then I got on a new one, and once I got on that new one, like things started kind of mellowing out. Like it was kind of, but also at this point, like I was going into college, so I was like starting my first semester of
Wow.
college after all of this like crazy stuff and hormonal changes, and like all of that was happening.
So,
So-
just so I can get the timeline right
Yeah.
and clear it up maybe for anybody listening. So this all happened between, is it kind of the summer between junior, senior year? Is that when this is happening?
Yeah, that's when I had treatment.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so you're going into senior year
with the adjustments.
with all these trying to adjust and then do the workload at middle college, whatever, being a senior and all of that stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then, and they say it takes about a year for your body to like really kind of adjust to the new like medication.
Okay.
And so that I hit that 1 year mark like right as I was going into college.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah.
And so then how often are they, okay, I guess 2 questions. So now you're going to be on some sort of replacement medication for whatever the thyroid does, all these different hormones, chemicals, et cetera, for like life now. Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
Because are you on thyroid medication as well?
Thyroid buddies. Non-functioning thyroid buddies. Actually, non-thyroid buddies.
Yes.
I don't know.
No thyroid, non-functioning thyroid.
Yeah, my mom also like it can be super hereditary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wild. That's crazy.
So
and another shout out, Christy, noticing this and living with a medical professional.
She
and like
found
all
it.
of
We
this
were
stuff.
in
It's
the
crazy.
doctor's office, and I like will always have this image of my mom like peeking around the doctor, going because she saw it. The doctor was feeling my lymph nodes because we didn't know anything was wrong.
Sure.
And then my mom spotted it and was like, "So can we take a look at that?"
What is that right there?
Because she knows, and and she's a great nurse, like I mentioned. Like she's just really awesome. So,
Yeah. So then you go through senior year. Now you're this cancer survivor. It's like, what was it like treatment to be? Because I think there's that moment where they're like, you are now cancer free, right?
Sort of.
Yeah. Explain that.
Yeah. So, and here's where like kind of some of the like coping strategies kind of come in.
Okay.
Because the type of cancer that it is considered a slow growing cancer. So what cancer is in itself is a cell that is multiplying rapidly to the point where it's trying to take over the body, essentially. Is a very like base level kind of idea of what cancer is. And so comparatively, like thyroid cancer typically does not grow, does not multiply quite as fast as other cancers do.
Okay.
And so the way it's treated is different, and just the way like the urgency and intensity of it is a little bit different than other.
Okay.
So when we were going through this whole like season of not really knowing what was going on, not knowing if it was cancerous or not, like just having all of this like confusion or we like my mom, again being a great nurse, was able to say like, okay, here's what's like worst case scenario, like even if this is what it is, like it's very treatable. And they say that it's like a good cancer. There's no such thing, but it's treatable and manageable, which is like a huge, huge blessing. And like just very like there's a lot of like hope that I was kind of having through that, knowing that. And so like even when I would get nervous, I'd be like, okay, but here's like kind of the reality. Here's facts. What yes. And so there was lots of like clinging onto that.
What about other relationships, like with your family?
Yeah.
Friends?
Yeah. So friendships, I mean, so when Caleb was on here, he was talking about Kinsey because they love each other so much and they're dating, and
his
it's great.
girlfriend, Kinsey Sky. She was Kinsey. She's
but
Sky
she's
now.
also my best friend, everybody. And at the time, like we were hanging out every single day, like very, very tight. And so she showed up for me like a ton throughout this whole thing. My small group leaders at church showed up for me throughout this whole thing. It was also a really weird time in the church as a whole because like we kind of mentioned before, like church was my like main community. Those were my support people, especially once I got into middle college. Like that's just who I was around. The preschool that I worked at was kind of ran out of the church, and so like that's just where my people were. But it was going through this like really wild transition at the time of there was just a lot going on. And so I think there was a part of me that like in my head, I was like, okay, like I've been here for a really, really long time. And now I'm struggling like a lot with this, but also this whole this whole community is struggling with a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there was a part of me that like that knew that like my struggle was also just part of a bigger struggle of other things that were going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just like a really weird time in general. And so like the people who were there were a lot of new people. So a lot of the people that I had known for forever and ever and ever were not necessarily there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just weird. Like it was just a weird time for exactly. And so I think like the community that I had been so connected with had kind of dispersed a little bit. And I think there was a part of me that was sad that like that community wasn't all like
banding
there
around you.
Sort of, yeah. Which I think there was some sadness in that I worked through later in counseling, and I didn't even realize that was like what was going on at the time, but that was just something else and still was a lot of COVID precautions still, like, so the like support that I might have gotten if this had happened
at a different time
was very different than the support that was available. And so, but I still I still had great support, and I still very heavily leaned on the support that was there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just different, and I think I knew that it was different than what it might have been at another period in time.
Yeah, COVID hit. It's interesting. I know it hit a lot of people in very significant. I mean, like actually lost people because of COVID, right?
Absolutely.
But I just remember thinking, because I know your family so well, that COVID hit you guys in such an interesting and difficult way, and not in a life-threatening way necessarily. But I remember that was your older sister Hannah's senior year, so she didn't even get an end to her senior year, like so many people that were affected that way. And then I remember also we're still in isolation, all this stuff, while you're kind of going through this treatment.
Yeah.
And it's wild because all of our stories come together through this church here in Charlotte. That's kind of how we all met. And part of one of the changes during that season was I was leaving. Like I was stepping away after leading the student ministry for 8 years.
Yeah.
And having been involved in it for 10 years. And it was just, we don't have time to get into that whole story, but part of it was just this divergence of where I was and all of that stuff. And then me kind of, and my family stepping away from that, and then deciding to stay on and help this new gentleman and his family as they were leading it for the next year or so, and trying to be supportive, but stay out of, off the stage kind of a thing. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. There was so much change during that time. And then like the leadership of the church changed entirely, all of that. And so we were just saying before we came on, like, we need to have coffee. And you can hear kind of where I'm at since these, because that's been almost 5 years ago now, which is crazy.
My gosh. That's crazy.
Which is wild. Maybe it's 4.5 or so, but all that, like what's changed in me and what I'm thinking about and all of that stuff. And, but yeah, that is a really tough time to be fighting cancer while this thing that had been so consistent in your world is suddenly so different. That's tough. I'm really sorry about that it all happened in that way.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting because a lot of the relationships that I was leaning on weren't relationships that I had for a very, very long time. Like, other than me and Kinsey. Like, Kinsey and I had been tight for a really long time, and like Whitney and Jess were my small group leaders, and so like they had known me since the beginning of high school. But some of these, like Caleb was also a part of that, and his best friend Tree. It was so interesting listening to that, because we, like, during that time we were all really, really, really close. And so, but then like Tree ended up going to school, and like, so then that support group that I had leaned on also kind of dispersed. And so then I was like, I don't even know, like I don't like that group just like, and I had leaned on them so heavily during that time because of everything else that was going on, that like when we stopped really hanging out, and like nothing crazy happened, like we just stopped like hanging out together. And so, but I think like I had this frantic like, oh my gosh, like that was my those were my people, and now they're leaving, and now if this happens again, now if something else goes wrong, now if like whatever, now that support group that I had is gone, and what am I gonna do? And so it was like this very like, I think I definitely that summer into school, I was like ready to kind of go really invest in community and go kind of like just start fresh a little bit, but also like just bring all of the things that I knew about how important community was to that and help build a really, like be a part of a really strong community at school. And I was like very much ready for that.
And ready to create it, it sounds like. Like you not just passively wait back and try and find it, but maybe be intentional about it.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah.
So, again, do you have any, because I keep just firing all these questions out.
I know you do. The only thing that I'll say, I know your story really well.
Yeah, you were there.
I've been there the whole time. But the fact that you're able, like you've processed all of this stuff in depth with your counselor and with your family and with friends and stuff, I feel like it's really cool how you are able to put words to all of these emotions and all of these realities that have happened. Like you can look and say like, this is what I was feeling. And then you look outside and you're like, this is why. Like you've just put language with all of that. And I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Great job. Like seriously, it's a great skill to have.
It's so true. Instead of just feeling and just kind of creating a narrative that doesn't necessarily have any specific evidence.
Yeah.
You just feel it and just take it as reality. You have looked at in detail all of these things.
Like we are in our schools this month, we were talking like through our thoughts curriculum, and we talk about how like you put your thoughts on trial. And so it would be super easy for you to look at that and take like a negative spin to it, but like you're looking at it and you're like, what is actually true,
right?
And this is what was happening and this is why. And I just think that's really cool.
Well, and I think that like if I had let my feelings and emotions and fears and like all of that was going, like if I had let that take control at the time, like I don't think I really would have been okay. And I also credit, and when I listened to Whitney's episode, like I didn't realize like where in the timeline of like of 4 students and of all of this learning that y'all were doing and all of this like new understanding of mental health and what's going, like I didn't realize how close I was like to that. Like as y'all were telling, I was like, oh, like during that time, like Whitney was like starting to become my small group leader, and during that time, like the way you talk, because you like in our student ministry, like the things that we talked about and like all of that, I didn't realize how much I'm like an original 4 student learner
before it was ever an organization.
Before it was even a thing, because we were sitting around and we were having these conversations and y'all were already sharing all of these new things that you were learning, and it set this really, really strong foundation of that, and also of my faith. Like again, like we've talked about how involved I was at church this whole time, and so like when what I was when I had to kind of put this difference of like, here's what I think and here's what I know. And so what I'm thinking is things are terrible. This is really scary. Everything's gonna be terrible and I don't feel supported and this is the worst thing ever and whatever, like all of these scary, like overwhelming thoughts. And then I was like, okay, well, that's what I've got going on over here, and not necessarily like. And I learned how to not like put shame to that of like, why are you feeling this way when really the reality of this, but in more saying like, okay, yes, you feel this way and that's how you're feeling.
Yeah.
But like while feeling that, like, let's think about what you know. And what you know is that you have a great family who's a great support system. And what you know is you had the support that you needed during that time. And that was really special. And what you know is like that, you know, like for me, like what I know is that God is there for me and that there were a lot of things that happened the way they did that in my experience would not have happened without Jesus. And like that would not have happened without my faith. And so, yes, like here are all of these overwhelming feelings, but when like, I think being able to say like, okay, those aren't necessarily reliable. And those, like, like for me, I don't think feelings were meant to drive to control the wheel. I don't think feelings were meant to be what you base your facts off of. And I don't think feelings are what should be controlling how you make your choices. And they can be there and they can indicate some really, really important things. Like whenever I hang out with these people, I don't feel good. So maybe I shouldn't be hanging out with these people. Or whenever I'm doing this, like it doesn't feel right. So maybe I need to think about this in a different way, or I need to kind of look at this a little bit closer. But I think they're meant to be that first little like light on the dashboard that tells you something.
I love that analogy.
That tells you how you need to drive your car.
Yeah.
And tells you, oh shoot, you need to put some oil in there.
Yeah. Check this out. Because this little red flag went up. This light turned on.
Yes. And I think that's the role that, for me, from what I learned, like this is the role that feelings play.
Yeah.
But like there's also all of these things, and there are people who are speaking truth to you, and there are things that for me will remain true no matter what. And so when my feelings are like crazy and overwhelming, like here's what I know and here's what I believe to be true, and I'm just going to hold on to that until I can ride this out, because this is not cute, this is not fun, this is not the vibe. And so let me just hang on to what I know from all of the rest of my life that has got me to where I am now. And so I think that was a big part of being able to work through that as well.
Yeah.
You're so cool.
You are so cool.
You're so cool.
And I love that. I don't know that you, again, are able to. And what you said about feelings being the lights on the dash, I think every time we talk to Amy, that's evidence-based stuff. They're like in the cognitive model, they teach you notice what you're feeling and then chase it back, follow that rope back to what story is that attached to why you're feeling that. What story do you believe that's causing you to feel this, and is that story true? Yes. And so for you, it's for everybody. That's a great tool to have and learn. I think that we've learned along the way. And it's funny, like you say that when you listen to Whitney's story and you think about that transition, as I'm kind of ending my time in, paid ministry and stepping away from working for a church, and because Force Students is not a religious organization, and we don't, bring our faith, our personal beliefs or anything into all of that. We try and stick to evidence-based science and all of those things. But it is interesting, and it doesn't surprise me that in your world and in your life, when you think about coping and what was important to you and what was helpful to you during that season, that this overarching narrative of hope was part of what, there is a story that you believe that was deeply important and true to you that was able to allow you to lean into that and believe that this isn't where the story ends. Yeah.
And it was very... interesting that, like, for me, like, while learning everything that y'all have been teaching, and I also took a positive psychology class.
Positive psychology.
It was really awesome. I really loved it. But, like, when hearing, like, all of these things about, like, okay, like, how do we as humans, like, how do we function to where we live the most abundantly? Like, how do we function? Thrive. Yeah. And as I learn these things, I'm like, oh, like, I'm pretty sure, I feel like I recognize that of, like, from things that I know about what Jesus taught and things about how I know. And so all of these things, because for me, like, because I'm a believer, when I see, and as a believer, I believe that God is the creator, and I believe that Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit are the Trinity. And because I believe all of that, when Jesus comes and starts teaching all of these things, it's like this creator, it's like somebody who created something coming and giving the demo on how it's supposed to function and how it best functions. And so when I see and, like, hear all of these things that it's like, oh, like, humans do really, really well in this kind of environment, or humans do really, really well. And then when they do these things and it lines up with a lot of what Jesus taught, I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense, because because as a believer, like, that's how we were created to function. So the fact that the creator comes and tells us, hey, if you do these things, like, things really work out, then it's like, okay, that makes sense. Like, that's not surprising to me. But the more we can learn about how we function the best, and, like, the more that we see that and learn that and, like, the better off that we can be. And it's really, really cool to like see that be put into practice. And I don't know, that's just been something really, really interesting and fun that I have been able to learn, especially being at Gardner-Webb and being at a religious university while I was taking this positive psychology class and taking this New Testament class like back to back at the same time. And so,
yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the things that I think, and certainly there's some people listening, because I mean, not being a Christian organization, all of that stuff, where we're really trying to hold out evidence, to everyone, like, hey, here is the best way to live and all of that. Some people are listening and they're like, whoa, is this, this is turning very Christian all of a sudden. But I think what I appreciate is that you being so honest about what is your story and your experience. And that's indisputable, that part of it. I think the thing that I find myself thinking about is the fascinating piece of, and I think a lot of people listening, this is where I was leading with this, who are thinking, and I actually had a friend who said, man, I wouldn't go to a doctor or a nurse who went to a Christian university. How do they reconcile the science and faith? Or, like, those seems like one is, unknowable, unprovable, or whatever, and then one is supposed to be the exact opposite, empirical, like replicable, measurable, all of those types of things. How have you, and I don't mean to put you on the spot as, like a nursing student, but it is an interesting thing. Yeah. Like, how do you reconcile those two worlds? Like you did just in one point right there say, well, actually, as I study the science of psychology, there's a lot of it that I see like repeated,
patterns,
like
and
in what is taught,
flows.
from out of your faith. How do you see those two things coming together? What would you say to somebody that's like, yeah, a nursing student from a Christian school, so they believe in all this unseen woo-woo stuff or whatever, but then they're going to take woo-woo, their family's the Woo crew, so that's like their last name's Wooten, so it's like this whole thing. So it's funny. But yeah, how do you put those two things together? How do you find yourself reconciling those things?
Yeah. For me, especially in like, I think it's for some people more difficult to reconcile the mental health and the spiritual. Like for me, I think with the physical, like the body and what's going on in the body. Like for me, that doesn't feel hard to reconcile because I think, and this is not an original thought, but I think I've heard some people say like, this is, the science and the medicine and like, what we're learning about and how to take care of people and how to work with their body when their body isn't working. Like that's kind of the what, and that's the what's going on, and let's look at that and let's see how it works and what's not working and how we can fix that. And then for me, like my faith in Jesus and God, like that's the why and the how.
Okay, of so like all the details are nested within this your narrative or kind of your worldview of where all that fits inside of. Am I understanding that right?
I think so, and I think what you're saying is like they're influencing each other.
Yeah,
but you're looking at the facts. Like this is like the actual learning. Yeah. You just feel like you have like this window back here. You're like, I'm going to do it by the book and this is how the body works and all of that stuff. And this is what I believe back here. Like this is what I think on the back end. So they're not necessarily like tied to each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that they're like completely not, because again, like I believe that God is the why for like all of these things, and that I believe that all of these things that I'm learning about, all of these body structures and all of these medications and what they do and like all of that is like the part of the character of God is this creator and this like incredible being that can create these incredibly intricate, like just insane things that like we as humans couldn't necessarily just come up with. Like I can't come up with how to make an eyeball work the way an eyeball works. And so I think like it's just been this really interesting, I don't know, like it's just been this like I don't know how to explain it very well.
Like I don't want to put you on trial. I was just curious, like as you're thinking about it, like have you bumped into places where you've had to try to reconcile anything or something
No,
where
yeah.
your faith or what you're learning actually, I guess at a Christian university, they probably are trying not to do that.
And I think I've heard stories from some other Christian universities where they teach things a very specific way. And I think my university does, teach things by the books and teach things based off of that. I mean, we talk about evidence-based practice of what do we know that works well. And then a lot of the support and the community that I've had at that school, I think that's where a lot of that comes into play of we are in here learning some incredibly complex things, and nursing school is really, really hard, and none of us really feel equipped, and none of us feel like we know what we're doing, but we have this piece, and a lot of us are there because we believe that's something that because of our talents and because of who we are, something that we were created to do. And that's kind of a lot of us are I don't know what's happening, and I don't really know if I'm really cut out for this, or even but I believe that I'm here, and I believe that God is going to do something with this, and so it's this hope in learning and this hope in the struggle of becoming a nurse, and I think that's kind of where a lot of that comes into play. But I don't think any of us have sat around and been well, the Bible says this, and we're learning this, and that's different. And how did I don't think any of us
I was just curious if it had bumped up against each other, or if you'd thought about it. And that's an unbelievably unfair question for me to ask you, to be honest. I'm super curious, and then I'll say things out loud. Have you thought about this? What do you think about this?
And then you're
so I don't mean to make you the representative of science versus, faith kind of thing. Right. But at the same time, I was just curious if you had thought about it. So I apologize for
No,
you
you're
on the
good.
Like that. It's something I think about a lot. So, I don't know. It's been amazing. Yeah. Thank you for being on here, for being honest, being so vulnerable, sharing your experience. I don't know. We just know you to be such an amazing individual who's overcome a great deal, who just is somebody we want to spend time with an incredible story. And we were man, it'd be so cool to have Emma on. I think Kelly was the first person to say that. And we should have Emma on. Her story is so cool. And it is. I think it's helpful for people to hear how important your faith is to you and how it has helped you in your journey, particularly in this unbelievable, difficult time and diagnosis, and then the rigors of being in school and all of that stuff. And so what's next for you? That's where we'll wrap.
So I have one more year left.
Wow.
Which is really, it's really one more really difficult semester. And then the last semester, we're just hanging out, doing our work, getting...
So is that when you're out,
hours and stuff?
Hours in hospitals or on floors?
That's just more it's what's considered nursing fluff classes.
Nursing
sort of.
Fluff classes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of these things that kind of go back to what we learned at the very beginning, where this next semester is intense, body systems and just really intense, big concepts that are going to be difficult to understand. And then the last semester is a lot of okay, how do we put this into practice? How do we what does it look like to be in this environment doing this? And just kind of more back to our basics. And then I'll graduate. And then the hope is to come back here to Charlotte. I'm really hoping my next semester I have a practicum, which is where I spend 120 hours in a hospital shadowing a nurse. And so I'm really excited about that. No I'm really hoping to get into one of the children's hospitals here in Charlotte. And I'm really hoping that that'll get my foot in the door, and that's where I can, end up working. But we'll see. We'll just see what happens.
So cool.
Yeah.
It is so cool.
You moved out of your dorm yesterday.
I saw that on social.
For summer.
Yes, I did. I had stayed in that dorm for the last 2 years.
Wow.
And so it's okay.
Don't worry. Not too sad
all of my other people are also leaving, so it wasn't very it wasn't super heartbreaking for me.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna live with a group of girls next year, and they're fellow nursing majors, and so we're gonna struggle together a little bit, and then
what a cool thing, though.
It's so cool.
Yeah. And then enjoy just our last semester, and Yeah, I'm excited.
That's so cool.
So cool.
Emma Wooten, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You're an incredible person. So excited to see where your story goes. And yeah.
Yes. Well, it was an honor to be here. I was so excited when y'all asked me. I was like, I can yap all day long.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know I can. That's for sure.
I can't, but that's okay.
That's okay. But
yes, it is.
you're awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
See you guys next time.